more rare one, which means that we need to work more with the child. The child will show you the route that she uses or he uses to come from the bedroom that she sleeps in. What we are searching for, though, is the child pointing to the direction that actually the room is. Whether they can make already the connection, not showing you the route, but straight to the direction. It shows you the level of development, and it shows you where it should be taken more work to do. I have prepared, once we have the multimedia, I will be able to show you several short videos with tools that can be used for development of two-dimensional mapping and spatial cognition. With three-dimensional, it's very easy. I guess that the learning support assistants here work with modeling or with sculpture. This is something which is very useful for spatial development of a visually impaired child. But the two-dimensional one, I don't know whether you have tried or you have worked with some tools for raised line drawing. I'll leave it for later. I'll show you the videos. It is a very simple tool. It is just a very rough surface and a pen which has thread inside it. So once you slide the pen over this surface, the thread sticks and you form a line. The other one, there are several tools. I'll show you. Some of them are quite advanced, some of them are very simple. But through them you can create 3D or 2D representations of every picture. Either you draw it or you print a picture of a building, let's say. You use a special pen on top of it, and then the person can observe it. These are ways to create a new dimension. Now, as I really want you to see this and how useful it could be in your practice, I'll leave it for later. Now, we all know that in part of the frontal lobe in the brain, much of the visual input is processed. What happens with our brains when there is no visual input? Bless you, Joe. In the earlier studies, it was believed that unless the child is very young, when the loss of vision happens, it would be impossible for the brain to adapt. Now, we already know that this is not true. Regardless of age, the brain changes and reorganizes itself in order to compensate for the loss. Even with people who have temporary loss of vision, already physical changes in the neurological structure of the brain are present. So the things that activate the brain sectors which are usually associated with vision are the tactile, and the other one is speech. So these are the two major tools that we need to develop in a child in order to be able for them to be able to create imaging in the brain. With the proper use of tools and the creation of different dimensions in space and spatial cognition, actually visually impaired people can form very, very complicated maps in their minds and can work with it. I have worked for 8 years with one particular child who was very interested in chess. He was born sighted and he lost his sight in the incubator. It was one of the old ones, they didn't control the oxygens, so his retinas were burned, but he has no recollection of sight at all. A colleague of mine who is a chess champion started working with him. We ordered a special chess board for blind and visually impaired people. It is the ordinary one, but we have the black squares a little bit higher than the other ones on the board. And there are little pins that are stuck on the board, so when you want to touch, you don't lose the game. We started working with the child, first of all, creating the map of the field in his mind. He started learning the field, where is A1, where is B6, where is F7. In 3 weeks, it was all in his mind. So the chess player, he was working with him, okay, show me where is this. He was observing first with his hands, then the board was hidden. Secondly, he started learning the basic movements of the different pieces. Easy enough. Kids with visual impairment have very strong memory. They really have much stronger memory, working memory especially, than us. So he learned this very quickly. And then we started with strategies for chess. This was the most interesting thing I have ever seen. It was observed by psychologists, cognitive psychologists, the entire process, which took over 1 year, and neurologists. The child started forming associations. He was maybe 13 at the time, 14, this age. He started forming associations of the different strategies for play, for attack, for defense, with historical battles that he learned at school. His parents reported that he started performing very well at home. He became much more independent. He was finding himself around, even in new environments, much more easily. He started helping more in the kitchen and being independent, getting dressed. Before that it was sometimes tough, you know, when he put his head in the sleeve and stuck there. But, so, this experiment unfortunately ended before we had the conclusive results. But what we have seen, that spatial development was really accelerated through this experiment. It is one thing that I really recommend to all of you. It is very simple to find this kind of chessboard. Until today, the chess player and the boy play on the phone. They live in different cities now. One party could take weeks. They both remember what each of them did 2 weeks ago on the board. It is a virtual one. Memory has been enhanced. Spatial cognition has been enhanced. And self-esteem. He has found himself being extremely good at something. He managed to beat twice European champion in blind chess. It's amazing. Thank you very much. We have the multimedia. Maybe, yeah, we can do it over the break. Maybe afterwards. Yeah. Okay.
At Volta, we've got suffrage. who is blind and who is also a chess champion. He was chess champion of the sighted in Malta. And I'm sure if any of you are interested in that area teaching, he will cooperate. Okay? That's only one thing, one factor, one leisure activity which can create success.
What I was trying to tell with this story, that leisure activities and skill development come hand in hand, just like in each of us, and that the psychological aspect of this kind of activities, of leisure, and giving opportunities and encouraging children with visual impairments to try new fields, to experiment, to find where they're good at, is very, very important for their development as a whole. Would you like to take a break now so we can assemble the multimedia and continue in 15 minutes?
Let's do that.
I promised you we won't be able to see them now because we don't have the internet. They were on YouTube. Anyway, Mariana has created a Facebook group. I'm going to share the links so you can see the videos over there. The tools that I was telling you for the development of two-dimensional, not only the three-dimensional spatial orientation and development. Now we are moving slightly from the cognitive development to the social development, and we are talking about the.
You mentioned that visual impairment have very strong work memory.
Yes.
Can you explain a bit more?
Yes. Yes, I mentioned this and then I didn't elaborate. Can you hear me without the microphone?
Yes.
So I can move.
It's better with the mic. Better with the mic. Better with the mic.
So I mentioned this before I started telling you about the example with the chess player. Working memory is the short-term memory. For example,
The mic is not working. Is it off?
yes.
Okay. Now it's on.
So, so the working memory is the short-term memory, the one that we use to solve problems, to perform tasks, not to remember what we did when we went to the holiday in the mountains 2 years ago. This is one of the biggest assets that visually impaired people have, regardless of the age. For instance, if we're trying to solve a mathematical problem, for a person who is used to use their sight, it will be very difficult if I read you the problem and I asked you to solve it in your mind without having the visual reference. As you know, when we are trying to solve, for example, a mathematical issue, we look several times, we observe. The visually impaired or blind person doesn't need it. Reading once or twice is already enough for this information to sink, to be processed, and to do its job, to solve the issue. This is also very important. I think that it will be elaborated when you're having the session on employability. This is one of the basic skills that people with visual impairments develop, and develop in a way that a sighted person could hardly do, which is one of the biggest assets for people to get employed, working with this memory. Is it enough, Joe? Do you want to ask me a particular question? I can
No, it's enough. I just wanted to make sure that the participants know what it means.
So, this memory of this 13, 14-year-old boy, allowed him to have a chess party of, let's say, 40 moves. I move something, you move something, I move something, you move something. He was able, and he's still able, to reproduce all the moves from the beginning to the end. I moved the horse from B2 to F7, if it's possible, I have no idea. Then I moved queen from, I don't know, F3 to F5. And then you move fork. How many do you think you can do? I think up to the 6th will be lost, each of us. Yes, much better. And
nor with memory, working memory, is the magic is number is every plus or minus 2. Some remember 5 bits, some remember 7, some remember 9, but never more, you know.
yes, this is what I'm saying. On the 6th, basically, the majority of us are lost. It is very easy to demonstrate. If now we gather here in a circle, I introduce a move, you introduce one of yours and copy mine. The third one copies the previous two and a third one from himself. 5th to 6th, it's already a mess. But if you do this performance with children with visual impairment, and the movement involves some kind of touch or sound, jumping or shouting or singing something, they will be able to do it endlessly. The difficult part will be for you, not for them, to continue. So, now we are switching to social development. This is one of the most important aspects. Theory of mind is the ability of any person to be able to realize at some point that the other people around him have different thoughts, different feelings, different ideas, and be fine with it. It's learning to walk in other people's shoes. These abilities start forming usually at around the age of 4 and are mainly fully developed by the age of 9. With visually impaired kids, especially kids who lose their sight at birth or very early in their life, this process is usually delayed because they are unable to observe the reactions of other people. The example that I gave you before, what mommy does when I do something wrong, or is mommy happy when I perform well, or when I say something, do people look at me in a way? This, unless we explain all the time and give feedback to the child, it is partially or totally unavailable. It is something that, through time though, if child receives attention enough, it is compensated, and by adulthood, it is fully developed. But again, it is up to us. If we don't pay attention to this part, then all the aspects of life of the child will suffer. Human relationships, self-concept, concept of the world, relating how different concepts and different situations form a pattern. These are all things that depend on this one. So, I can give you a very simple technique. This is the mostly used technique by psychologists. to test where the child you are working with is in theory of mind. Can you give me an average of the age group that you're working with? 5? 9? Primary, okay. Secondary? Okay. So, let's start with primary. A simple test that usually a 5 years old child is supposed to cope with without a problem if the child knows that, for example, in a shoebox are stored shoes, or it could be any object that the child is familiar with, lunchbox, for example, or anything. You take this box, let's say it's the shoebox, and that the child is aware with it. It knows that when you tell him this is a shoebox, it knows that it usually contains shoes. There are 2 kids that participate in the experiment. One is in the other room, one is present with you. You bring in the shoebox. You ask the child, what do you think there is inside? Shoes, of course. You open the box. We see that there are shoes. And then we say, okay, let's see what happens. And we put a teddy bear inside. We close the box. We invite the other kid and ask the first one, what do you think that your friend thinks there is inside the box? It's very simple, but it's very logical. If theory of mind is formed, if the child is already able to understand that the other child couldn't know that we replaced the shoes with the teddy bear because he was not in the room, he's supposed to say that there are shoes. That the other child should think that there are shoes inside. We have a delay if the child, which is the subject of the experiment, cannot realize that the other child couldn't know that something happened while it was absent. It is something each of you can try in your environment. It could be modified the way you like, but this is the simplest test that you start with. What is very important to know about it is it can always be improved, the development rate, regardless of the age. Mostly depends if there are other disabilities involved. One of the participants I spoke with today works in a resource center. just to try to rehearse it, just to try, when two people are rehearsing, to have the feedback of the others. Oh, I've been in this situation, I know it worked like that, or it didn't work well, why don't you try this and that? Because I think the most important thing here is to exchange the experience that we have. Because I'm not standing here as authority, I'm just standing here to share experience, and I'll be very, very happy if I can learn from yours as well. So another very important part of theory of mind, this ability of children to understand the feelings and the emotions and the reactions of other people, is the formation of relationships. Unless we have this ability, unless we can understand that another person can think in a different way, can feel something else, can have different interests than ours, we are unable to make friends, maintain relationships, and we are unable to solve conflicts. You know that usually the reason for the creation of a conflict and the violent resolution of the conflict is our inability to try to understand the other party. So it is very, very important for each of us, in order to be able to teach the child, is to rehearse. One of the topics that I will explain to you here is give you some practical tips how to teach a child, for example, join a group, make friends. You know that even for people who have no impairment, usually it is very stressful and it's very difficult to approach others. It is much more, as Joe said before, kids with blindness or visual impairment, because they feel very insecure, they feel very tense all the time. So approaching, creating friendship or relationship is, I don't know, our anxiety by 10. This. But once we manage to give the tools and the ideas and the scenarios to these kids how to approach, maybe it will be much more simple. One aspect that we need to start with is body language. There are two sides of it. One side is, okay, with a person with severe impairment cannot perceive the body language of others. But even though they have not learned the appropriately accepted, commonly accepted manners and body language used, they have their own. But it's very often that they act in a way, for example, showing an emotion in a way which is totally incomprehensible to others, or is not accepted at all by society. So it is the role of the caregiver to teach the child how to express himself, herself through their body. Posture, facial expressions, mimics, gestures, these can be taught. These should be taught. You know that very often children with visual impairment have body expressions like shaking a bit too much, or constantly playing with something in their hand, keeping themselves busy. These are things that can be taught or untaught in this case, in order to make make it easier for kids to be accepted in society, in community. And the other part is for those of you who work in mainstream education, where there are the kids with impairment and the majority of kids without an impairment, to also try to work with the other kids. To try to build this theory of mind, this concept of the other, of the difference of the other, different thoughts, different feelings, different needs, into the other kids. I teach in a theater school for children. I have a visually impaired child, I have a child with autism. I have a child with severe speech problem. My work has become very, very easy since I managed to teach the other kids how to support their fears. It usually doesn't happen at home. You know, many of you probably are mothers here. This is not the first thing that you think of when working with your own child at home, because you're not there when your child is at school and there are some kids who are different. You just don't think about it because you're not exposed to it every day. But as educators, we can do a lot. It will make life much easier, not only for the kid with special need in the class, but for all the kids with special need that your child or the other children will encounter in their life once they're out of this class. Now, regarding relationships formation, there are three major factors that influence how relationships are formed. The first one is the level of impairment. As we said, the more severe the impairment is, the more difficult it is for the child. I'm not talking here only about the visual impairment, but very often visual impairment is caused by another disease or impairment or disability. This is something that we should evaluate. We should see where we should put our expectations and move on. The second two factors, though, are really, really up to us. One of them is the character of the kid. Whether it's introverted, whether it's extroverted, where it has natural easiness or difficulty approaching others. Regardless of the case, it could cause a difficulty. Very logically so, if a child is an introvert, which is often the case for visually impaired kids, they are often used into engaging into solitary activities, not in group play or group activities. It is difficult to approach, or even when they are approached by other peers, children, they are difficult to be integrated in the group, in the situation. We can help it through role play, through rehearsing, through making something unfamiliar familiar. The other part, the other side of high extroversion can also cause a difficulty if somebody is too pushy, they're trying too much to impose their opinion on the game they want to play, and it also leads to exclusion. Again, our job here is to try and to teach proper communication. Again, this is the theory of mind. This is the perception of the feelings and the needs of the other. The third one is the most common thing that influences relationship formation and the development of the child. This is the overprotection of the caregivers. Very often, as parents, as educators, we are driven to overprotect people who need our help. Even if it is a child who has no disability, we want to protect them from everything. But especially when there is difficulty in place, we overdo it. We don't give enough independence, which in the beginning is accepted easily by the child, until it starts understanding, comprehending that different standards are laid upon it, that different expectations. So he starts thinking, oh, I'm not good enough then if they don't trust me with throwing the rubbish away or collecting the mail maybe or something else. So this is one of the first factors that this is one of the major factors that makes our kids unhappy. Regardless if the kid has a impairment or disability or not, it is always the case. Actually, things are not different with children with disability or not. It is our reaction to it. It is always the same things that make a child or an adult, with or without a disability, a person with fair self-concept, and a person with self-confidence. It is the belief that we are capable of. It is the belief that we are useful to ourselves and to others. And the perception of freedom. What we do, we try to limit too much the kids. We try to protect them. Oh no, you don't have to do this, mommy. Maybe you know that if you trust your child with, I don't know, throwing away the rubbish, you will find pieces of it on the stairs, on the floor. It will create more work for you, but please do it anyway. It's very important. It's also very important to find ways to encourage the child to help others, to help peers. Because usually a visually impaired child often needs to ask for help in order to balance this situation. We need to give them some ideas, some ways to help others, in order for them not to feel uncomfortable to ask for the help which they need, and to feel equal member in the community. So, as we already spoke about the exceptional working memory which is developed in visually impaired children, explaining situations, or as I told you, giving suggestions for ideas how to help others, how to get involved in a group activity. This is a very good practice because you will not have to repeat it many times. It goes in, it sinks in, it's there, which is again a coin with two sides. Because whatever you like to influence with your child or the child you work with sinks in, but everything else sinks in as well. So please be very, very careful what you speak in front of it, of him, of her, how you treat them,
Give an example of this.
Yes, of course. Well, let's say I'm an actress. I'm going into a kindergarten or a primary school to give a performance for the children in the class. And usually I involve 2 or 3 kids from the class in the animal or something, a tree maybe. So I pick 3 kids. 2 of them come on stage. Third one is staying there, and then the teacher comes and says, in front of the child, "Oh, don't pick him, he's blind." It's easy. These are things we cannot afford. So this is why I was telling you. Very, very good.
And it's affecting.
Of course, yes. He's not good enough. He's 4 or 5 years old, and he already knows I'm not good enough. I'm not like the other kids. I will not be selected, and every child is expecting, secretly hoping that they will pick him this time.
Which frequently used to happen to be on the bus. I would ask the bus driver, "What number is this?" And he would say, "Are you blind? Are you blind?" It happens frequently, yeah.
Okay. Something else which helps a lot is reading. Even if you don't have the time to read every day to the child, there are huge resources of free audio libraries. The good ones are not just tapes of somebody reading out loud like me, na 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 na. There are audio plays, audio performances with sound, with effects, with actors giving their best there. It is so helpful. It expands the world of the blind child. The blind child has a very limited world. It usually starts with the family environment, a few more distant relatives, maybe the neighbors, and the school environment. They don't engage like others, like from a very early age into group activities, observing how things are done and making the connections and creating I'm sorry. Yes.
You can't even watch a film. You remember how difficult it is? Think about it. You can't watch television.
Yes.
You can't watch a documentary about animals. You can't.
Yes. But with an audio play, with an audio book, it is all there. It not only introduces new concepts, but it creates the connections. It makes the entire framework. It gives you the context.
Can I add something?
Yes.
This is my bedroom. You're right.
Take the microphone, Joe, please.
Reading is extremely important as an educational tool. We all know that. But we simply don't give enough attention to it. When a person reads, he is building the world inside him, building the world inside his brain. For example, you start talking, teachers starts talking about apes, okay? Or I don't know, right? Dinosaurs, that's even that. The other children can look at the picture of dinosaurs. The blind child can't. mean he's not interested. Once he can get the image of the dinosaur into his mind, he does this through touch, etc., explanations, etc. He's like every other kid. And then, with reading, increasing this vocabulary, especially the lexis, and especially the way one generates the power of language, it increases his power. Because ultimately, for the blind child, power lies in his language. Power lies in his ability to manipulate language and manipulate others through his language. And you can only get that experience through reading. That's what I have.
Thank you. This is also a great compensatory tool for the missing input that visually impaired kids have from the situations in life, in the family, for example, that other kids observe, of the relationships, and help them be able to build strategies in order to be able to go through life afterwards, especially human relationships. I would suggest reading and role play. It will give amazing results, very quick results, because one will give the context to the child, the other one will make it familiar for him or her to participate. Role play. It's very important because when a child with severe visual impairment starts learning a language, generally structural language is acquired as in all other children. The problem is the language that the child uses for social conversing and communication. So this is why it is so important for us to teach strategies for social communication to our child or to the child that we work with. Because otherwise, this lack of input creates delays in the development. In terms of educational performance, I think I mentioned before, usually in academic performance, the children that most of you work with in primary school, it is normal to have a little bit of delay in academic performance. It is primarily because Braille acquisition is a very slow process, it's a very difficult process. If each of us decides to learn now, we'll see that it will take a lot of practice in order to learn this skill. But unless we give up, unless the child is deprived of proper schooling afterwards, and of course focus is given on his strengths, by secondary school, performance becomes equal. So it is very, very important. I get so pissed off when I hear some of my colleagues say, oh, you know, he's like that. Why you spend so much time on this? Because it pays off. Because it creates one person who is capable, who is confident, and who can have an independent life tomorrow. Now, the next thing is what I was joking in the beginning with. What happens if you're blindfolded and you need to go outside and you're a child, you want to play, you want to join a group of kids. First, you cannot see what they're playing. Second, when you approach, you cannot see how they accept you, whether they accept you. You can only hear. Third, as children with visual impairment usually prefer solitary games, they're not so much aware of the interests of the other kids their age. So another very important aspect in relationship formation is, okay, you know the other kids this age, try and find out what TV show, for example, is now popular among them. What music do they like? What games do they play, regardless on the street or on their computer? What are their interests? And try to fill in this gap with the kids you work with. Once they are aware of the interests of the others and have enough information about it, it is much more easier to approach and become part of a group. Because you already have something in common. You already have a strategy which is given to you by the caregiver. What to talk about, what to try to engage them to play with. Because otherwise it's very, very difficult.
It's easier said than done. Suppose there's a kid and he's in a classroom.
Suppose there's a kid, I'm thinking of one of my students, and he's in a classroom where the only topic of conversation is Messi. The game he played 2 days ago, etc. And they know everything about every player that has played since I don't know. And this child is suddenly, in this case suddenly, deprived of the chance to A, play football, and B, watch football. It devastated him. It devastated him. When I asked him precisely find out what others are interested in, he said they're interested in a game where they shoot planes. I can't see that. And it's, I don't know, it's very difficult. It's difficult. So that's what I can say. I'm not giving solutions. I'm trying to get you to understand their problems.
I will be happy if you join in the discussion. I'm sure that each of you were in this kind of situation. One of my students was so much into Queen, the band, and rock music. Nothing else matters. So, whenever he meets somebody, he's like, what music do you like? I'm like, well, I don't know, dance. Oh, you suck, you know, it's Queen are the best, and he drives them away. I'm like, please, you might not like the music they do, but be tolerant, don't offend people just because, well, this boy, with his obsession for music, and for rock music and soul music, and he's an amazing musician at the moment. I'll probably post a video on the group. I would like to show it here. Unfortunately, I can't. He's playing with world-class musicians now at international at international festivals. But it is a child that first his parents and his caregivers never spared him the fact that he's blind. They never tried to minimize it. They never tried to say, oh, you know, you don't see well, or no, you're blind, that's it. You have this limitation, but you have a amazing sound discrimination. You have amazing memory. He started composing music when he was 16. His family and his caregivers managed to build his self-confidence by constantly approving and showing him what he's very good at, but not building him up, just like that with something which is not. He was constantly told that he needs to work and yes, he's a bit different, he should compensate for this and that. But he was supported, first, to follow a dream, and second, he was always told that he's enough. Even though he's different, he's enough. So,
But Elena, again,
yes.
because very often,
Take the mic.
we know this, you all know this, but the parents themselves very often do not cooperate with this. Do you find this? They depend on the educator to provide this positive feedback, etc. And they resent it. Marilena and Chandrine here were with me when a 65-year-old who became blind at about 10 started talking about his parents and how he still can't forgive them for certain things. Like, for example, his father talking to the doctor instead of him. So, for example, he gave us this little role today. He's with his father, there's the doctor, all right? And the doctor asked, how old are you? And the father turned to the child and said, say, how old are you? Then, yes, all the time. He's blind, all right? In other words, until finally the doctor said, is he dumb as well as blind? Or deaf or whatever? It happens very frequently. Exactly. Exactly. Yes, but how are you as educators going to deal with the, I don't want to use the word, indifference sometimes of the parents, the learned helplessness of the parents? How are you going to deal with that? Not easy.
Can I add something?
Yes, of course, that's the whole point too.
One thing that throughout the years at times, and still I would say, they're in denial, or, they sort of obstruct the learning process. But then, I've also discussed it with somebody who's a psychologist, and sometimes it's a coping mechanism that they hold back and that they, so we have to also put ourselves in their shoes, that they're 24/7
Yes.
with the child. So usually what I have practiced along the years, I tell them, look, I have to be a bit strict, even not only with the child, even with you. Can you permit me to be that, Can you give me this permission to try this or this method, And they usually agree, They usually agree. But you have to challenge them slightly, but still giving them their permission, asking for their permission.
But the challenge, where does it come from?
Can I ask something?
Yes, please don't say it.
No, to add to what you were saying, yes, I think when you mentioned learned helplessness, I think this
It's
doesn't
my
happen.
buzzword there.
only with the blind. This happens with many parents of children who have other disabilities, that they feel that the experts know best. They are not competent in order to take care of the child, in a way. The fact that sometimes we have, how should I say, us as educators, I put myself in it as well, set ourselves up as knowing more about the child than the parents themselves, makes the parents keep back. And over time, that's what we said, resonated with me. We have to empower them. If we don't empower them, they are never going to feel that they are competent to push the child forward. They always feel that what they do is probably incorrect.
And they get very mixed messages from the schools as well. I mean, at the beginning sometimes they make you feel that, as Lynette's saying, they don't know what to do with the child and that the experts know best. But then at the same time, then if they push, then they're either in denial as well, or otherwise then they give up and they're not doing enough, and then
so they just stand back.
They can never win. So
To add to
sometimes.
this, once I was in a class of 10-year-olds, and there was a child who was listening, and I spoke to the teacher about it, and she told me, yes, but her parents are both doctors, you know, we can't let them. Once during break, the child herself approached me, and I had never spoken to her about this situation because I had to liaise with the teacher about this. She came and approached me. She realized that I was helping children with difficulties. And she approached me. She told me, Miss, do you know how I can talk properly, speak properly? I told her, I'm sure we can try to do something. Let me speak to the teacher, and then we speak to mommy and daddy. And we spoke to the parents, and they told us, you know how many times we've been putting it, you know, postponing it to do something about it. And I suggested a therapist. And she told me, you know, she's a very, very good friend of the family. So can you imagine?
Yes.
To that extreme.
They are not empowered to take action.
Yes.
Which links to Andrew's lecture last time about advocacy. And of course, hopefully in the future, how we can train young kids to be self-advocates. But that's an entirely different point. So very often I think it belongs, we have to challenge the parents. We ourselves have to challenge the parents. But it's not easy,
Empowered.
You call it empower, I call it challenge.
You have to remove the idea, the learned helplessness, as you said, the idea that other people can do things better than them. That's what learned helplessness is.
Yes, that's what it is, but-
That's something like that.
They need to feel that they know the child the best and that they can advocate for the child themselves, and that they have the space to, rather than just being told constantly by other professionals that, listen, we are the professionals, we know better. The parents know their child.
But do they care sometimes? Let me get angry because it's constructive to be angry sometimes.
I think they do care.
All right? Okay. So you tell them there is a practice session on how to use, I don't know, a specific tool. All right? It's Friday, etc. I have work. I have to take my child to. The father does not like. Come on, I can't understand that.
No, I can't, because for them, that is not something that they'll be competent in doing. That's something best left for the experts. It's been brainwashed into them. It's been brainwashed with other parents that have children with no disability. When it comes to reading, teach your child how to read before they start school. What?
Yes.
You're going to do it wrong. It's you know, it happens all the time.
And another case in point also, if I may add, even, for example, if it's not an academic subject like English, maths, and in our case Maltese. If you find that the child, she really is a star in, let's say, art, you know, she's really, and you can point it out to the parents. Sometimes, not even that, you know, they take on seriously. They might not realize how important it is. That it
So
doesn't
play
have
to
to
the
be
strength.
English, maths, or Maltese, you know, but this is something.
Let me give you another example, which I came across this week. I have a large screen on my computer, all right? But because of my visual impairment, I can no longer read. But the child I'm helping can read if it's expanded a bit. But in order for the whole sentence to fit in the screen, he has to move the mouse. And it's very uncomfortable. Believe me, it's very uncomfortable. Because he has to stop, therefore the pattern of his reading is disjointed, etc. Right? Now, all it takes is a large monitor. His parents have bought him a large monitor to put in his bedroom. I would never do that. Why? For games. So he has a monitor for games. And he continues playing till 2 o'clock in the morning. But they have not. All right? Even thought about the idea of helping him to read by connecting, you know, a computer to that monitor. And when you tell them, I'd ask his grandfather, he knows about such stuff. It's been 6 months. How do you deal with that? I don't know. And they love the child, that's Muslim. All right? They do everything for him. But where practical things like this come, have you had this experience?
Yes, as long as it's
Procrastination.
I don't know.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
No, I'm very glad that we're having a discussion. We try to.
Yes, this is okay. Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Not only us, but as we spoke before, engage the parents as well to affirm constantly what the child is good at. It gives them incentive to work harder, first of all, to become amazing, if we tell them so. And second of all, it gives them reason to feel confident to approach them. It is also the story that I'm going to tell you now from my experience. It is also related to the last point that we have here, giving the child opportunities to meet other people with visual impairment, either peers or even adults who are accomplished. This boy, the musician that I told you about, he was very, very, very shy when he was younger. And as I told you, he had this approach, he was driving people away, oh, you don't like the music I do, so you suck. And then, I'm a friend of the family. This is one of the reasons that I was spending a lot of energy, thinking all the time what I'm going to do next to challenge him. Yes. So, I read somewhere that new habits is built in 21 to 28 days. Physically, the new neural connection in the brain is formed in 21 to 28 days. It's amazing, you can change everything in a month. So, he was already in this rock stage, you know, Queen and Led Zeppelin, and he really enjoyed when I told him that those players have all their wrists covered with leather bracelets. So I started giving him one each time I wanted to challenge him. So I give him a new one, a different one from the ones he has, a different texture or different braid. So I said, okay, every morning when you're washing your hands and you feel it, say to yourself in the mirror, I'm a great musician, I'm very good at music. I can hear a sequence of tones and I can reproduce it, I can sing it, I can play it, I'm amazing. So it was a challenge for a month. He was supposed to say it to himself every time he felt the bracelet on his wrist. And then the next challenge came. I found another bracelet, a different one. I gave it to him, added to the collection here. And I said, okay, now you're going to show other people how amazing you are. Your mirror already knows it, it's been a month. Even a mirror can learn in a month that you're amazing. So we started organizing small performances, either at school to show how well he sings, or how well he plays, or somewhere else, on some city celebration, something. Well, we built him up. He became popular at school, and he became very proud because it was his own doing. The more attention he received from his peers and from adults and from even strangers who appreciated his talent, the more incentive he had to work harder to impress them even more. Now he's already at university. He's in the biggest music academy in Bulgaria. He's doing very well. And I was always trying to show him, I don't know, Andrea Bocelli or Stevie Wonder, people who achieved what he was always aspiring for. So this is a great thing you can do. I will ask him, he's an adult already, and his family as well. If they agree, I will publish some of his performances on the group that Marilena created for this project. You are free to share his performances with your students to show them, okay, you don't see, but you can have an amazing career, you can be very happy, you can be very popular with girls, with peers and others. If I have to be honest, I do this as well. I wear a different ring every time I resolve to make a change for myself. And it really takes a month, it's very easy. You can use it, it could be anything that will remind the child that you work with that he has resolved into something. Maybe the first time, first several times, it will be more difficult because you need to create a habit in them and constantly remind them that they promised you that they will do so and so when feel the bracelet, for example. But once a task is accomplished and they see that it works and they did it and they're good at it, it becomes very easy because they already believe in themselves. So,
doesn't work with smaller children.
Yes, well, you need constant reminder, but with them, it works much faster than with adults.
Is it linked to the concept of locus of control, which is perhaps I make that explain.
Not here.
Charming is not here, and I cannot explain.
Looking for control is whether you consider yourself to be in control of the world around you, or you consider yourself to be a sort of victim of the world around you. It's a very important concept. It is the concept of self-esteem, etc.
And there is a third one also, which is the fatalist one,
Yes.
which is different, fatalist one, which is different though from the ones you explained, which is, I believe that what happens, happens to me, regardless of what I do. I'm not exactly the victim, but what should be done will be done, what should happen will happen.
Maktub, the Arabs say.
Yeah.
What is written is written.
Yeah.
Then you become the victim, no?
Apathetic.
Yes, this is, I think,
Motivated
yes.
and very sad.
But especially with younger children, we can be so creative, and there's so many ways we can, I don't know, inspire them. With the older we become, I think the more difficult it gets. Because we already have experienced more disappointments in life, and we are less assured that it will work next time. But with the younger child, they're much more open. Also, the plasticity of the brain is different than an adult. So, if the neural connection would be formed in an adult in 28 days, it will be in much less in a child. So, the new habit there happens much easier. So, I think I already covered the rest of what I have here, how to encourage them to help others. Like, for instance, I don't know, if you're very good at music and someone is struggling from your class.
Yes, but I have a practical example. You have a blind child, he doesn't know how to approach a group of children who are playing in the playground. How can you teach him to approach them?
Well,
Right?
yes. Well, the thing you can do is give him different scenarios. You go and say, hello, I'm Adam. And then they can respond in different ways. These ways of coping with different situations, we usually learn by observation of environment, through fairy tales, through TV, through environment. When it is not accessible to the child, some of it, we can give it to him. Okay, if kids do this, you can always do that, and it is not bad, you shouldn't be ashamed of it, that's fine. I had this in my practice as well. When I was giving an example for stimulating, inspiring someone by affirming what he's good at, not that he's good at everything, I said that when you do it the right way, and you do it when they accomplish something, every time they accomplish something, not just out of the blue, hello, good morning, you're an amazing artist or dancer, you stimulate them this way to work harder. You explain them to work that if you want to become even better, you need to put more effort. You need to work 2 hours today after school, playing the piano, for example, not one. They need to know the connection between. When you try to inspire them with people who succeeded, they need to know that Chopin, for example, okay, he's not blind, but he has many different conditions. He was spending 9 hours per day playing. Yes, yes. Yes, it's true. Everything is possible. Mariana had shared the story in the Facebook group of a very successful photographer who is totally blind, using her other senses to make photography. So even if we are not really sure that the interest that the child is showing is appropriate, give them a chance. But it's also very important because visually impaired children usually have more limited interests because they know less about the external world. To introduce them to new ideas and new activities all the time. Because what makes them very shy afterwards and puts them off is being into a group of peers and they are totally lost because they have no idea what the other kids are talking about. Having no idea how to play, younger kids usually, even if they're told that, okay, this child needs a bit help and you should be a little bit.
This year we are going to have this child who has this disability. So he needs support. So they alternate during the year, group goes between group goes. So they are aware of the situation. I see that peers with children with having difficulties, they are very helpful because they are more aware. Since inclusion was done, carried out, children are aware. When they were segregated, they were not segregated. But recently, they do.
My children have a very close.
Yes, but even normal children. Not with disability, but there are children, like we said, no? But I see that experience have taught me that children are there, you see them now, they go quickly and help without telling them, not even with a blink.
Yes, it's very often the case, but for example, it happened to a blind child. Everyone went for lunch and forgot him. Because everyone thought that someone else would help. And he was standing there alone in the classroom, hungry, angry. Yeah. It was not on purpose, it was not because they didn't care, but they're kids. So, Joe.
Okay.
I'm giving you the microphone.
So we're going to talk, I want you to think about, reflect, talk about leisure. First of all, as I said in the beginning, we know that the great problem of our age is isolation. All right? Sorry. Is isolation. All right? We're living in a world of uncertainty when we want certainty. 30 years ago, when I first got my first computer, 25 years ago or something like that, we were promised the paperless office. Have you seen it? Even more, we were promised the leisure society. All right, we're going to have problems how to teach people how to take their leisure, because working hours are going to decrease. Have you seen it? All right, we've seen the exact opposite. There is more tension. You can not get away from that email. All right, you cannot get away from that message. All right, so we are always tense. We're always in a work mode. We're always in a state well, physiologically, we're always full of adrenaline. Now, this has effect on health, of course. All right? Blood pressure, all the diseases which we have, very well, not all, but many of them are related to stress. Now, let me remind you, please, that a visually impaired person is very rarely at ease unless he's in his own home. Every time you go out, you become a little bit scared. All right? Again, let me tell you about myself, because I used to take 50 kids, 20-year-olds, 18-year-olds, all over Europe. And I was the leader. I could arrange this, I could get that, or I'd get on this airplane, etc., etc. Okay? Suddenly I found myself afraid to get on a plane because I can't see anything. All right? And the first time this happened to me, I have to admit, I cried. I started crying in the airport. All right? Because I was afraid. Now, how can we get the kids to be self-confident? Through giving them the experience of success through leisure. Now, when we're talking about leisure, we have to talk about physical activity. What sort of physical activity can blind children participate in? Give me your experience or ideas.
Go down the slide.
Oh, my child will fall down. No, not the slide. No. Oh, wait. What else? Sorry? Yes. See? Swim. All right? Swim. But even with swimming, very often, you find that it's more difficult than one thinks to get the child to participate in a swimming club. All right? For example, in Malta, water polo is very popular. But try to get a 14-year-old blind kid, or visually impaired, not even blind, to participate in a water polo club. They regard him as extra. All right. All right. Who's going to do that? Who's going to teach him?
I think they do.
Who? Tell me.
Specialized coach.
Specialized coaches. Where can I find them in Malta?
We have
There is
Right.
Roberta Stellini.
Yes,
Roberta Stellini.
I'm thinking of. She was an LSC and she teaches swimming.
All right, good. That's what I expected. But the point is, how can we get the resources which exist together and expose the child and the family to these things?
Of course, if you go to sports Malta, they will guide you where you can find help. They will, I'm sure they will help you.
That's course, I'm sure they will help you.
Especially
These are.
They work a lot, they just turn their coaches.
So, is it your duty as an essay to help the child find these practices?
Of course. I think primarily, not in their years, you have to expose them to as much as possible. But as they go along, you have to see their preference also, not what is available only, even their preference, where they're sort of...
But you have to expose them.
No, in the early years, yes, but
even later, because parents very often have no idea. Have any of you heard of Torbol? Have any of you heard of Torbol? Apparently, there's a Torbol Society. It's a game for blind people with balls which clink or whatever, or etc. Torbol? Yes, but how can we organize young people to get together to play something like that? Sorry? Candle bikes, yes, they do. All right. With candle bikes, they are available. All right, they are available. If anybody is interested in tandem bikes, if you call, oh George, I forgot. Joseph Safrach, all right, the president of Guide Dogs, they'll be available, bikes, etc. Other things.
For example, in drama, as Elenia was saying, I know there is a school in Malta. They accept even artistic children.
Open doors.
Yes.
Open
Not
doors
open
from-
doors, only even at Montanaro.
As well, yes.
No, I mean, there are.
Hello, lady.
They accept, I mean, they include other kids with difficulties, even with social backgrounds, which are.
And this Christmas, there was a pantomime written by a blind boy, Samuel, and it was quite good. The Panto in the Dark. How many parents, how many kids have the luck to have a parent like that? That's the big problem. And where do you stand as individuals? Where do you stand?
But we need to create more awareness.
And we need to create a space. We need to create a place. We need to create people, a place where people are involved, ready to do this. They exist. It's just the organization part, which is so difficult. For example, what's her name? Elena was telling us about a school in Portugal where they are involved, all right, in arts. We've got all these facilities. How do we get them together? Elena,
yes, one of the most inspiring things that I've seen is a center for support of people with disability in Coimbra, in Portugal. It started in the 70s as an initiative of a doctor whose son had disability. And now it has grown into an institution through the support of local community. It's a regional center now, with an annual budget of over 9 million euros. It provides services for people with disability from newborns until the elderly. They have 2 physical centers at the moment. One provides support for the babies. Then there's the nursery, the kindergarten, the primary and secondary school. With each of the users of this service work 7 different specialists: physiotherapists, psychiatrists, different teachers, educators, art therapists. They have about 10 different types of art therapy available according to the interests of the users. They can choose and participate. There is also the other center which provides support for adults with disability, providing adult education, vocational training, and also there is a special course for people who are in need of re-qualification at a later stage after an accident or after, I don't know, loss of vision or hearing at some point and need to get another job. The service is free of charge and it is a community initiative. These 9 million euros per year are gathered through the support of contributors. Started in the beginning with contributions from family, friends, community. The company started contributing to the budget. Yes, it started growing. Some architects and some construction companies started building in the physical premises, which now involve huge farms for working therapy, horse riding facilities, and huge stables.
Now all these
I'm saying this because it
exist here.
is doable. I mean, if all the resources, just you need a way to bring them together and make all the service available at one place.
The problem is, okay, horse riding, it's one place.
You can do it in what's it called?
Razzetta.
Razzetta Viberia. All right? Dancing, you have to pay probably. All right? But there are people who are employed to teach these things. The problem is awareness, and that is where you come in. You are the people who will change this situation. Simply exactly by creating the demand, talking about it. All right? Now, if there is one kind of animal which I dislike, it's the political kind. But politicians are responsive only to pressure. Only when people talk about them. They don't see you as individuals, but remind them that you vote. And remind them that the child will vote, and the family will vote. And suddenly you become their best friend. But they have to be persuaded all the time. All the time. Otherwise it won't work. So really, even where such thing, for example, such a center, all right, where we're talking about, a place where the arts can be used as leisure time and increasing, self-awareness, self-esteem, etc. There are 1,000 places we can do it. There are 1,000 people who can do it. Let's get them together. How? We have to work together. All right? What about other forms of leisure? For example, last time, Stanley talked about games. All right? If you remember, there are games, computer games for blind individuals. And of course, chess, etc. Does anybody want a chessboard like that? Our center has chessboard like that, which we can lend you if you want. All right? Marilena has got some really good stuff. For example, snakes and ladders for blind kids. Very nice. They can play with other kids as well. They exist. Have we got a center where these are available? No, of course not.
I think they should be available at school.
Yes.
Things, so they are not segregated and they can play together with the other children, not
Yes. But first, you have to make the schools aware that they exist.
You have to ask.
And you have to ask. And with
Not
some...
once.
Exactly.
rather than ask, you have to demand. Or at least they will be in a center where they can be lent to schools.
That is exactly what our next project, we hope, will be.
Student services, the students of course.
Yes.
Could they there, for example, I don't know, just.
Have you ever seen any organization in government take the initiative? Have you? Very rarely. They do, but very rarely. We have to take the initiative. In other words, for example, if our NGO starts putting pressure on the politicians, if we go up to a politician and say, yes, 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 that's a very good idea, for the next 5 minutes he's enthusiastic, then he forgets you. So you have to repeat, repeat, repeat. Then you have to suggest, if we, for example, have it in a particular place which is accessible, etc., then it's more feasible. If we get this, okay? They will look at it. It's not very expensive. They will get it. All right? They will tell you, yes, yes, we will fund it. Who will actually order this stuff? You will have to do it. The NGO, not the minister, not the... This gets me angry. 2 years ago, we were promised by shall I mention them? The Communications Authority, all right? That they will have got almost, I think, $1 million, something like that, from the EU to set up 3 centers for technology, so in Malta, one in Dozo, for disabled people. You know? Now, we are at Price, we started with that, and we said, thank God, we can go out of business. That's the best thing possible. 2 years on, it's fallen through because it was so difficult for them to get people to get the tendering process. 2 years, and they lost the money. That is a shame. That is a shame. And that's what officialdom is for you. So please keep fighting. Not about heads. Some are really cooperative. But some will say,
But if you keep pushing, they will give you what you want.
yes, I think so. I think so, but you have to push, push, push.
Vera pushta.
Yes, I know.
Ma mhux għalija l-istudenti.
What about your opinions about this? Leisure. What kind of other kinds of, there's intellectual leisure, chess, etc., physical leisure. What about what some have called emotional leisure? Places where people, you organize where people can meet. Now, this is interesting because of the experience of the deaf. I don't know if any of you have ever had students who were deaf. Yesterday I received a phone call from an old friend of mine whose daughter is deaf. And he told me his experience. First of all, in the deaf community, there's a conflict between those who want to use sign language and those who want to implant, etc. Now, if you go to a club where these people use sign language and they want sign language to be recognized as a minority language, as it is in the United States, it will be you who will be disabled there, not them. You will be disabled. But is it a good idea for them to coalesce so much? It also is a problem. Do you want clubs for blind children? What is your opinion about this? I'm trying to put hair.
as I already said, for me, the best thing is to bring together children with and without the impairment.
That's what to do.
You don't want to keep them closed communities forever because it doesn't help. Because what happens tomorrow when they want to get employed? Are they going to work in a company with only visually impaired people? I don't think so. If we want to create the appropriate social skills, they should be in the environment that we are all in. Did I answer your question?
No, but because I can find another argument which says that if they meet each other, all right, they realize that they are not unique.
Sometimes it has to be like that, sometimes.
Yes.
It's like, for example, in my school we have a lot of foreigners, it's another thing. They are included in the classroom, there is no difference between Maltese kids and from other. But during the break, they all go together, Bulgarians, Polish, they're together, and it's good for them.
They do it automatically.
They do it automatically, they feel
At home.
at home, ahead.
So if you have a club
It is
for
very, at
blind,
times it's good,
Yes, but organizing a club
specifically for that.
I mean, would you
makes
exclude
something
visual
permanent situation.
Would you have reverse
And then it
exclusion?
becomes more difficult
Would you exclude
to
sight?
integrate them in a treatment. This is what I think.
Għax id-def klab imorru, kemm
Yes, there is sense in
Exactly.
what you are interested in.
Exclude.
But I'm not sure about that.
Yes, I think it should.
I don't know if you've ever been to the deaf club.
Sorry?
To the deaf club. It's in Valletta.
I
It
don't
is
know.
not just for them.
Yeah, it's for everyone,
It's for
you know?
everyone.
And even like, okay, they speak with the sign language, but some don't even have a choice because the implants don't work on some of them. They just have implants to reduce certain frequencies because they hear them so much, they hear them. But then it's up to you. I mean, if you want to feel excluded from the other end, it's up to you to learn their sign language.
I mean, it should be bilingual, shouldn't it?
And
The same
like
way.
we learn English and Maltese and other
Exactly,
things.
so-
And it's really nice. I've been there,
I
I've learned their
think-
language, and it's
It should
fantastic.
be. There are many, many people who are not deaf who have learned sign language.
And
It's
a lot of people are there. They
But
meet
I-
every Friday.
All right, let me make an argument against what I have said.
No, you can have a club that is equipped with a friendly environment for persons who are visually impaired or blind, but available for everyone. But it has the availability of all the resources for persons who are blind to participate. So it serves a dual purpose.
In fact, one of the nurses who teaches and is part of the group of this club, he said, helped a lot of young children to socialize more with others that are not hearing impaired. So I don't see why it should be otherwise for the visually impaired.
You can have siblings that are going to come in, you can have other children that are coming in anyway.
But there's always a danger. In Malta, we used to have the Center for the Blind, I forgot, at the Braille Center in Santa Verna or something, Braille Street or something like that. And originally, blind people were put there and they were encouraged to weave baskets, if you remember that. Every classroom, when I was a kid, had a cane waste paper basket made by the blind, all right, until the market fell with plastics. But there are still clubs where these people, some of them quite old, go there, talk, have coffee, and learn nothing. They are not interested in learning anything. They are happy with their pension, but they don't tell you their pension is too small, they say. All right? As usual. And it's
it's a very distressing sight.
But you say that they're older.
That's it.
So they have to.
That's
Before there
it.
was no awareness.
So that's the whole point. Now we have to prevent that generation from repeating itself, from reproducing itself.
I mean, I remember that these groups of people were actually exhibited at the trade fair. You go and see these people actually wearing
Oh, yeah.
which was such a. I mean, so what was this? That's the life they know.
Just come 2 feet down. Look at Michael working all the time with computers. Look at Joe Vella. They're blind, but the hell they can do everything they want to on computers. Just come. Please see the places where these things are possible. Other leisure activities. I think it's over. It's late over. All right, so that's over. I wish to thank Elena very much for coming over, especially from Bulgaria. All right, she's just come for 24 hours. It's not part of her duties. She came because she believes that she can contribute. We're very, very thankful. At least I'm very thankful for her, and I think that she did a pretty good job. Thank you very much. That's it. Thank you very much, Elena. Thank you. So eat them with time.